Iranian missiles have struck a U.S. base in Jordan for at least the second time this week, amid reports of multiple U.S. casualties. What you're seeing here is new footage of two Iranian intermediate-range ballistic missiles, or IRBMs, bypassing U.S. air defense and appearing to impact on the Al-Azraq air base in Jordan. Now, while many U.S. bases throughout the region had been previously evacuated or were operating on a skeleton crew, this isn't one of them. Al-Azraq has been one of the main hubs of U.S. air power during this war, with a significant U.S. troop presence. So these images and videos showing what appear to be fires raging where the troop barracks are located certainly raises concerns that there could be additional casualties yet to be reported. As of right now, we have no reports from U.S. Central Command or the Pentagon, but I wouldn't read very much into that. Based on firm's data, it appears the firefighting effort may still be ongoing, so any casualty notification right now would be a bit premature before the situation there is fully under control. Now, we did get a report yesterday from CBS News saying that an Iranian strike earlier this week in Jordan did wound several U.S. service members. They said there were no fatalities in that attack, but the severity of those injuries is not yet clear. And a concern I have anytime we see munitions getting through is kind of the question of why and how did this happen? Right? You have to have back of mind right now in this conflict the question or the conversation about interceptor stockpiles. This is not a scenario, from what we can tell, that Iran launched hundreds or thousands of munitions and it just overwhelmed U.S. air defense. It looks like they went after a couple of key locations. And from what we can tell from the information that's been released, it does appear that a fair number got through, be it Kuwait, Bahrain, or the U.S. base here in Jordan. And I do want to stress that any kind of look into that right now would be pure speculation without more information. So we'll wait to see what the coming days bring here as these Iranian attacks continue, but not a good sign that multiple missiles appear to be getting through and striking their mark. Now, U.S. Central Command announced last night that they have completed their 7th consecutive night of strikes in Iran, and it does appear that we are expanding our targeting to include more infrastructure targets across the region. Now, there have not been any press conferences or press briefings put together by U.S. Central Command. I'll put up on the screen here the extent of the information we have from these strikes. They said they hit surveillance sites, military logistics infrastructure, underground weapon storage, and maritime capabilities. However, I want to add that just based off of some Iranian media reports that we've seen in the last 24 hours, it does look like a number of U.S. strikes were focused on things like bridges, rail lines, roads, and tunnels, with a fair number of those hit just in the last 24 hours. In fact, the Telegraph put together a report talking about the possibility of why certain areas are being targeted here. And let's pull up the sheet here from the Telegraph. I'll have the link to this article in the description below. But they say the bombings carried out in recent days by the United States leave Bandar Abbas, a city of 500,000 people, where roughly half the country's trade comes ashore, almost completely isolated. By Friday morning, the roads linking the city and its people to the rest of the nation lay broken, the railway severed, and a port that helps feed some 90 million people all but cut off from the country it sustains. Bandar Abbas is also home to Iran's main naval base, which is critical to the regime's ability to control the Strait of Hormuz. So worth looking at a map here to show you exactly where that is. We've got live UA map here moving into Iran. Of course, the Strait of Hormuz, this bend in the middle, Persian Gulf to the northwest. And as we move in Bandar Abbas, you'll see this major city sitting right on the Strait of Hormuz, right in the Strait of Hormuz. So major naval base, major location for Iran to oversee any shipment moving through that vital waterway. And as we've talked about in recent videos, we're not talking about the nuclear program anymore. We're not talking about the ballistic missile program or the proxy forces. This is the key wartime priority today. That might shift, but reopening transit through the Strait of Hormuz appears to be, by all metrics, the U.S. priority today. So going after Bandar Abbas and trying to isolate this location, you can see how that might play into it. Now, the striking of infrastructure gets into a gray zone very, very quickly. In fact, there was a report earlier today that I'll put up on the screen from Iranian Mer News that the United States went after a desalination facility in Jask, which is a bit south of Bandar Abbas. I hope not. That one is not easy to explain. If it was sitting exclusively on a military base, fine, but from Iranian accounts, again, not corroborated at this point, That one facility supposedly helps provide drinking water to around 20 villages in that location. Now, bridges, rail lines, roads, tunnels, all of that can be justified under military use. If those locations or those facilities are being used to bring military equipment in, to shut off transit through the Strait of Hormuz, or to collect tolls, or whatever it might be, with the Iranian military, those all become viable targets. But again, there's a reason we have stayed away from striking infrastructure, and this can spiral very quickly. I mean, if you recall in a video a couple of days ago, we talked about how a number of Iranian officials just straight up said, almost word for word, if the United States goes after Iranian infrastructure, we're going to destroy everything in the region. And we're starting to see that. So Reuters came out with a report this morning saying, quote, Kuwait came under sustained attack with a desalination plant hit and operations at Kuwait International Airport suspended due to repeated missile and drone threats. Kuwait Petroleum Corporation said one of its oil facilities had been hit in repeated Iranian attacks, causing significant damage and some injuries. Iran also launched attacks on Saudi Arabia for the first time in about 3 months. So we're seeing a number of our allies across the region get hit. We're seeing fires, we're seeing smoke, we're seeing the missile launches. The battle damage assessments are pretty heavily suppressed, I would say, across the Middle East at this point. I think it was yesterday or the day before, there were reports. It sounded like a missile launch or a drone launch from Iran. Shortly thereafter, there were reports of an explosion in downtown Dubai. Silence. Nothing came out of that. Maybe it wasn't related to this at all. Maybe it was a misreport, but it is very hard to get detailed battle damage assessments from any of these strikes right now. But we should stress that Iran has been saying now for a couple days, if we go after their infrastructure, as it appears that we are, again, countless videos and pictures showing what are strikes on roads, bridges, and tunnels, they say that they are going to hit everything in the region. A member of the Iranian negotiating team earlier today said, quote, if Trump continues to strike civilian targets, the UAE will be next. And then a senior official of the IRGC, Mohsen Rezaei, Rezaei, said the policy of negotiation and simultaneous conflict has ended. If the United States continues its aggression in the next 2 or 3 days, we'll move to a stage of total attack and destruction of the enemy beyond national borders, despite the fact that we've already inflicted heavy blows on the enemy. Now, the desalination plant in Kuwait, of course, another major concern. A lot of this region relies on that for drinking water. That is the type of thing that turns the region uninhabitable. So when you see strikes on, there's kind of levels of infrastructure strikes here. You've got at the bottom kind of roads, bridges, rail lines, things like that. Towards the top, you have the desalination plants. That is like an apocalyptic type scenario. So I'm very hopeful that the pictures that Iran released of a facility getting hit in your desk was not a deliberate U.S. strike or not a desalination facility. I hope Iran stops going after those in the region, because that is like bringing everyone down with you in a fiery blaze. Now, in terms of what to expect here going forward, we have now shifted from kind of a tit for tat retaliation. If they do something, we're going to do something, to strikes are ongoing. It is continuous targeting. I would expect we're still going to see daily U.S. updates, but there's probably going to be attacks inside of Iran, and then Iran launching the retaliatory strikes on a near continuous basis. With that, a little bit concerning that we're seeing daylight missile launches from Iran. Haven't seen that in quite a while, and we should have enough aircraft overhead, enough reconnaissance assets nearby to be able to track down those launchers and carry out strikes. The fact that they're willing to fire missiles in the middle of the day gives me a little bit of concern. Now, there's no indications at this point that Iran plans to move back to negotiations. Everything they're saying publicly is pushing away from that. I mean, they just a few hours ago announced that the memorandum of understanding is no longer being enforced. They're not party to it anymore. They say they are no longer abiding by those terms, to nobody's surprise at all. I feel like they probably could have said that a few days ago. Strait of Hormuz still continues to be one of the primary focus areas. It does look like passage through that strait has effectively fallen back to zero, kind of back to where it was peak war. I mean, I'm seeing occasional reports of like 6 ships got through or 8 ships got through. That's effectively nothing, right? So we need to get up well north of 100 per day to get anywhere near what is needed there. And then continuing with Iran, everything that we are seeing from Iran is talking about escalation. So they are, if the U.S. does this, if the U.S. does that, everything is focused on what Iran is going to do next. And I don't think we can write that off, given that just today, we're seeing a number of Iranian drones and missiles get through U.S. and allied air defense and strike at least nearby some of those targets. So look, we're back in it fully. The Iran war is back on, and it looks like the United States has changed our strategy a little bit, maybe isolating Bandar Abbas, maybe focusing more on that area around the Strait of Hormuz, but we should expect these back and forth strikes to happen for some time and all the ensuing consequences. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.